Hey there, how you doing there? This is Joe from the Home Studio Guru. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today we're going to be diving deep into the world of audio compression. So we're going to be breaking up compressors piece by piece and learning how to use them effectively so you can upgrade your sound quality in production, mixing, or even mastering. So this subject, whether you're a musician, producer, or even a curious audiophile, it definitely concerns you. Everybody loves compression when you get into audio. So stick around, lots of information on this video. So in this video, we'll be covering the following topics. We're going to be first starting with what is audio compression? And second, why do we use compressors? And then what type of compressors should I use? And then what are the key parameters to understand in a compressor? And then we're going to go into practical tips for using compressors with real world examples like dragging some different sources like vocals, beats, or others. And we're going to go through them and see how we compress them and all. So you ready? Let's jump right in. So let's start first with what is audio compression? Well, let me say it in an easy way. Audio compression is an important tool in music production and sound engineering. At its core, compression reduces the dynamic range of an audio signal, meaning it evens out the differences between loud and quiet parts. So this results in a more controlled and consistent sound. So the next question is, why do we use compressors? There are definitely a few key reasons. The first one, like I mentioned before, is to control dynamics. So compressors help maintain a more consistent volume throughout the track. You don't want it to go up or down. And then we can use it also to add a punch and sustain. They can enhance the impact of a certain instruments or vocals. Also, we can using them to prevent clipping. You know, a compressor and a limiter are one, so you can prevent your audio from peaking or even distorting. And with a lot of other ways is to shape the sound by adjusting various parameters. You can mold the character of your audio. You can make it crunchy, soft, distorted, and etc., etc., etc. So what type of compressors are out there? There are definitely various type of compressors, including the VCA, the FET, and optical compressors. Also, we have the stock one that comes with your DAW. Each one of these has a unique sonic characteristics and applications. So it's important to choose the right one for your needs and preferences. So next, let's get into the essential compressor parameters. Like, ratio, attack, release, threshold, and all. Starting with the threshold is the level at which compression starts. Call it like the guard line. Ratio is the amount of compression applied, like how many guards out there. And then we have the attack, how quickly compression engages, and we've got the release, how long it takes for compression to release back to its original state. And then we've got the makeup gain, where we can adjust the output level after we compress the music. So here, let me explain to you how compression works. In a compressor, like we said, we have a threshold, we have ratio, we have attack, release, and makeup, and definitely we have the knee. We're going to be talking about each one of them. But just to understand how compression works, I'm going to draw like a wave file, something like that. Forgive my drawing, I'm just using Paint from Windows. So that's a wave file. And I'm gonna draw this black line, which is supposed to be the threshold. So this black line is the threshold. Now, I want to tell the compressor now how compression works. Contrary to most people believe, and I watch a lot of YouTube videos talking about ratio, how it works. So I'm telling the compressor here, every time anything passes above this threshold line, the black line, compress it, or how much you should allow to go through. So ratio is not how much do you compress, it's how much you allow to go through the threshold. Let me explain. Let's say I have a 4 dB passing above the threshold. How the ratio works now. Let's say the ratio is set to 2 to 1, which is here, 2 to 1, okay? What this formula means, it means 8 dB, let's say it's a 8 dB passed above, you're telling the compressor for every dB pass, divide that by 2, okay, divide that by 2, and whatever number you get, this is what you allow to go through the compressor, not how much you compress. So 8 divided by 2 is 4 dB, that's how much you allow to go through the compressor. So it's not how much you compress, though in this formula here, you will get 4 by 4. So 4 will be compressed and 4 will be going through. But let's say we set this to 4 to 1, which here 4 to 1. Now you're telling the compressor for every 8 dB pass through the threshold, allow only 2 dB, because 8 divided by 4 is 2. So only 2 will go through the compressor and 6 dB will be compressed, right? So 8 divided by 4 is 2, and whatever left, 8 minus 2 is 6. So 6 will be compressed, 6 dB will be compressed, and only 2 dB will pass. Now let's say it's 8 to 1. Let's set this 8 to 1. Now notice the more we go higher in ratio, the less we allow things to go above the threshold. So 8 divided by 8 is 1. So you're allowing here only 1 dB out of 8 dB to go through, and 7 dB are getting compressed. So this is how they relate to each other. Is not how much you compress, is how much you allow to go through the compressor, okay? So to get you out of all this mathematics and show you a real scenario in real sound and compression. So we have here the stock compressor from Studio One. All the compressors are the same as long as digital compressor. We're talking here digital compressors, the stock compressors, that they don't have a character. They just compressor that does mathematics, basically. So let's say I want to compress this sound here. It's a beat. Let's set it on the real BPM. Notice I want to compress a part of the snare, or like a little bit of the transient. I want to cut a little bit of the transient. So now if I set the ratio 1 to 1 and I set the threshold down, notice nothing will happen. Why? So let's say a 4 dB passing through, and I tell the threshold anything pass above the 4 divided by the number in the ratio. What's the number is 1. So 4 divided by 1 is 4. So it means allow 4 to go through. That means I didn't do anything. If it's 8, 8 divided by 1 is 8. So allow 8 to go through. That means I'm not ordering it to stop anything or to compress anything. So the ratio will do that. So let's say I set it to 4 by 1 in here, and I start compressing. So now what I'm telling the compressor, whatever go above the threshold, let's say a 6 dB pass above the threshold, okay? Divide that by 4. 6 divided by 4, now I need a calculator for that. I know this is too much. It's 1.5. So I'm telling the compressor, allow only 1.5 dB from the 6 dB to pass through, and the rest compress it. So the rest will be how much? Would be 6 minus 1.5. So 6 minus 1.5, it's 4.5 dB. Now notice here, this is how much I'm supposed to be compressing. Now that if I got it right. See, notice now I'm hitting 6 dB here, and I'm compressing about 4.5 dB. I mean, if you get 100% right by mathematics, okay? So this is how it works as a compressor. So ratio tells you how much you allow through the compressor and not how much you compress. Now, the next thing comes the attack and release. Those are really, really important. And I got this image from Universal Audio. I really like how it works because it shows you when the compression starts and when it gets released. So notice in this draw, that's exactly like the draw I did before. We have a threshold and we have a wave sound going through. And now I'm going to tell the compressor to start compressing. Now, this is the attack time. Let's say each one of these is 10 milliseconds. So 3 of these will be about 30 milliseconds. Let's say I tell the attack time, set the attack time. Here, let's put it on directly on our compressor. Let's set it at 30 milliseconds. Okay? Because that will help us now to understand how this thing will happen. At 30 milliseconds, I'm telling the compressor, start compressing at 30 milliseconds. So the compressor will go through the sound, the first 10 milliseconds, the second 10 milliseconds, and the third 10 milliseconds. So now that's 30. And now it's to start compressing from here. Notice? But let's say I set it into 10 milliseconds. So the compressor will go through the first 10 milliseconds and will start compressing from here. So this will be below the threshold based on the ratio I set there. And so on. Now, the release time is, it tells the compressor anything. The moment the compressor stops anything going through above it, now release, let it go back to this original state and then compress it again. So let's say I set this to a super fast, to 1 millisecond. What will happen? The sound will pass the first 10 milliseconds, which is that, and then will pump up again. That's why they say if you put a fast release, the sound pumps up really fast because it goes back really fast. And if you want it slow, you slow it down to, let's say, 30 milliseconds or 20 milliseconds or like 50 milliseconds, depends on your beat or your source that's going through the sound. Now, with all this, I know that these are all ideas. It's just to explain to you how compression works. But in reality, you don't think about these numbers. You just follow your ears. And compression is all based how much the sound is crushed or not crushed, or how much you removed from a transient or made it punchy, and all these things. This is what real compression is. It's not more like calculation. I'm just trying to explain because a lot of people have no clue what these things do. They just do random things and they hope the compressor will work. Because if you understand these things, it will help you to start understanding compression. And when you do anything and any move, it's calculated. Beside hearing it, it's also calculated, like, because it tells you, for instance, I decided to remove 2 dB from, let's say, a vocal transient. You know exactly what to do. You don't have to go figure out what I have to do. You just go and set up the 4 dB ratio and set the threshold, set your attack, set your release, and you know exactly what you're doing instead of figuring it out while you're doing it. So now we're going to be moving to real live examples. I'm going to be using vocals, I'm going to be using beats, I'm going to be using different transient, and we go through each one and we see what we want to do with it. Okay, for instance, let's pick up a vocal here from my, I have a lot of, in Slate Digital, I got some vocals here. Okay, let's get a phrase, some phrase here. Let's get a longer one, if there is. I don't think I have a longer one. Chops, row vocals. That's lovely. Row vocals. Hooks. Oh, lovely. That's a full hook. And it has a good high dynamics in it. That's exactly what we need. So let's throw a compressor on this. Let's throw this, our compressor from the first example. And let's put it on. And let's delete this track. Okay.
Idea, come sit it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that? I got a good idea, you should sit it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that?
Now, notice, what I want to do first, the first thing you have to decide what you want to do. Where is the problem with the source that you have? Is it transient problem? Is it soft, low, a lot of dynamics? You have to decide what you want to do. Like for instance, in this example, let's say I don't like these transient in the voice of the singer. Like I noticed there are these words. Look
Idea, come sit it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do?
These one, I want to reduce them. So I drop the compressor in, and in my head, this is what I want to do. I want to tell the compressor every time any of these things happen, cut them out. That's it. So what I want to do, I want very fast attack and very fast release. I don't want to affect the rest of the vocals, and I don't want to touch the makeup. All I want to do is just cut these transient that is hitting in my head, and I don't like them. So now I'm gonna set this ratio to, let's say, 5:1, because I want it to kind of limit it even the more. If you put it 8, or we will test and we see how it goes.
Idea, come sit it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that?
Notice
I got
the
a
compressor?
good idea, you should sit it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that? I got a good idea, come sit it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that?
So now I want to show you what I did. I'm gonna create another track here, a stereo track, and I'm gonna input this track to it. And I want to record what I did. Like I want to show you what the compressor already did and compare an image one to another. So let's record that. I'm gonna mute this track also, so they don't.
Hey, what you trying to do with all that? I got a good idea, come sit it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that?
Now notice, let's see the difference between them. Notice all these high, I just got rid of them. Look at that. You see this, how long it is? Look here how short it is. So it's just cutting, like you are slicing part of the vocals. If you don't want it to be that much, you can even make it faster. Like you go on the compressor here and you tell the compressor not 10 milliseconds, make it 5 milliseconds. So you don't want to touch anything except the stuff that go through the compressor.
Hey, what you trying to do with all that? I got a good idea, come sit it on.
And let's increase that so it becomes like limiting, okay?
Hey, what you trying to do with all that? I got a good idea, come sit it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all...
So notice it's cutting about 3 dB from the vocal. Let's see now, after I did that, how it will look like. Let's delete that and do it again. Let's record.
Hey, what you trying to do with all that? I got a good idea, come sit it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that?
Now notice it didn't affect the sound much because I'm not actually affecting the sound. All I'm doing, I'm cutting these transient, and these transients super fast in milliseconds, so your ear cannot hear when they go down. The only difference will happen, you won't hear that it disappeared, it's gone. So look at the transient now, how they look like compared to each other. So I cut a little bit of this transient, notice? And because I didn't increase the volume, notice I cut through it like about 2 or 3 dB. And notice this didn't get affected at all, especially if you're using a digital compressor. Digital compressor doesn't change the sound. It just keeps it as it is. All what it does the order that you tell it. It doesn't have a character. It doesn't have personality. It just does whatever you ask it to do. So notice here, like these look at that here. For instance, this is how very big transient in the sound, it became softer. So this is what I did.
Trying to do.
Let's hear it in this and let's hear it in this.
Trying to do.
So notice is you're not hearing much difference. The sound is exactly the same. The volume is exactly the same. It didn't affect the whole thing. It just cut that little thing from the vocals and didn't touch anything else. So in this case, that's what I use compression for. So let's say you have this vocal and you want to first trim some of the sounds at the beginning. And now the next one, what you want to do, you want to increase the low stuff up. So whatever is low, you want to increase it up, and whatever is up, take it a little bit down. So the first compressor, just cut the transient. The second compressor, we're going to create another one with very low ratio. It's going to be very soft compressor. It's not going to do much for, or let's say, we're going to change that. Now, in the second one, I'm going to use a soft knee. Why a soft knee? Because I don't want the compression to be hard. I want it to go, notice on the compressor.
Do it all that.
Look at the line on the compressor. There is a point going up above, wherever it reached this line, this is what is getting compressed, and this is below the threshold. So this is the line, is the threshold. Notice? So notice this is the threshold line. So whatever above this point, here, this line is the compression, and here below that is uncompressed sound.
Trying to do it all that. I got a good idea.
Now, when I increase the knee, notice how this thing becomes soft. So there is no like compression doesn't happen all of a sudden. It starts softly, you know. It's like a softer attack, basically.
Trying to do it all.
So what I want to do now,
Trying to do it all that. I got a good idea. You should sit it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that? I got a good idea.
Now notice, because I did that, the volume went down because I took about 6 dB from the compression. But here in this case, I don't want the attack to be fast anymore. I want the attack to be soft. I want things to go through. I want the transient to go through because I already cut them. I don't need to cut them anymore. And I want the release also to be like medium fast. Like let's put them both around the medium, like here. I want the attack to pass at least 30 milliseconds.
Trying to do it all that. I got a good idea. You should sit it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that? I got a good idea. Come sit it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that?
Now I decreased the volume a lot because I cut part of it. So now I'm gonna bring it back.
Do it all that. I got a good idea. You should sit it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that? I got a good idea. Come sit it on my lap. Trying to do it all that. I got a good idea. You should
notice when I shut off the compressor and switch it on, you don't hear any difference. But I want to show you what happened to the original track. Now let's bring that. Let's record that again and see what will happen here. What the compressor did. The two compressors actually.
Hey, what you trying to do with all that? I got a good idea. Come sit it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that?
Now, notice everything got contained. You see, this went really down. And now, because I allowed a lot of sound to go through the attack, I didn't tell the attack to catch this. I let it go through. Notice, because I increased the whole volume, I created a new transient here, which I don't want. That's why you have to know what you're doing with the attack and release when you do that. So let's delete that a little bit more, and let's play with the attack in a way that I don't destroy the sound. It's very important not to destroy the sound. You want the sound to be soft. So instead of doing what I did now, I'm gonna
did it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that? I'm
gonna compress 6 dB instead of 12 dB, or I allow things to go through the compressor.
Did it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that?
And I'm gonna speed up the attack a little bit, like 15 milliseconds.
Did it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that? I got a good idea. You should sit it on my lap.
Notice I'm always switching on and off to see what I'm doing with the compressor. Am I doing anything? Like,
did it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do?
The best compression is the compression that you don't hear. That's if you want a transparent compression. If you want the compression that you hear with a harsh thing, that's like with the sound designing and stuff, that's total different thing. In vocals, most of the time you want that sound designing is at the end. First, you want to contain the vocal as much as possible.
Did it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that?
Now, let's set another compressor equal to this one and does exactly what this one does.
Did it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that? I got a good idea. You should sit it on my lap. Hey,
what happened if I cut the 3 compressors?
Did it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that? I got a good idea. You should sit it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that?
Okay, let's hear what happened when I record that and how the whole thing looks like.
Hey, what you trying to do with all that? I got a good idea, come sit it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that? I got a good idea, you should sit it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that?
Now notice what happened with this compression. Notice these low volume one, they became all equal. Notice that? Only the transient is getting high now. Okay, so what if I went to the first compressor and I cut more transient out of it? So let's say more than 3 dB.
Hey, what you trying to do with all that? I got a good idea, come sit it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that? I got a good idea, you should sit it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that? I got a good idea, come sit it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with...
Okay, now let's see again how it looks like. Let's record that again.
Hey, what you trying to do with all that? I got a good idea, come sit it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do with all that? I got a good idea, you should sit it on my lap. Hey, what you trying to do?
Note that everything now, in every sound, things are more contained. Now, these transient, you can still deal with them with another, unless you want the sound. A lot of people, like especially in hip hop, they like this, they like to keep it, and they actually make sure it stays there. So my fellow YouTubers, if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and hit that notification bell so you won't miss any future tutorials. Also, feel free to leave your question and comments down below. I would love to hear from you. So now let's move to something else other than vocals, like a drum. And let's use a different type of compressors. We have the digital compressor. This is the stock that comes with Studio One. We have an SSL compressor. This is, I love it for gluing things, also limiting on buses. You have the opto compressor. This is amazing, soft attack, soft release. But this version, this from Brainworks, it can go really fast release. It's still slow attack. It's very transparent on the vocals. You don't hear it much. It has a nice character to it, like an opto compressor, but you can control the attack and release and contrary to LA2A, that the attack and release are usually set automatically in it through it. And then we have the FET compressor. This is 1176, that's what they call them, 1176. This is really fast compressor, and it has an aggressive sound. And then we have the Varimu compressor. Moo! Yeah, Varimu compressor. This is from Slate. This is amazing bus compressor. I usually use it on vocals, bass vocals, on drum. It has this mid-range, and the way it compresses things is in a really nice way. It gives a nice character to the sound, and the way the release moves in it is different than the other one. So now I'm going to show you each one of them at the same setting and how they sound, and why would you choose one compared to the other in let's say on a drum bus. Now, usually in an SSL compressor, one of the most popular way of gluing sound is setting the attack, usually like you see here, 30 millisecond attack, the fastest release, setting the ratio at 4, and then you start playing with the threshold without touching the gain. You just want to glue things, basically. So I'm going to do the same with all these compressors and see how they sound compared to each other. So I set this to 30 millisecond, the fastest release, didn't touch the makeup gain, set the ratio at 4:1, and I'm going to play to get about like 3 dB of gain reduction. Without. And let's hit it a little bit harder, to like -6 dB so we can hear anything. Now let's check the second one, the townhouse. Let's hit it about 4 dB. Notice here, if I hit it to hit 6 dB, though they are the same setup, they have totally different character. The way they react to the sound, their release, their attack, and everything is totally different from each other. So with each one, you have to set the threshold in a different way. Like this one, the release, though it shows the fastest release, but way faster than the fastest release of the digital compressor here. Here it shows 1 millisecond, there it shows 0.1 millisecond. So I don't know if they are equal or in any way, but it just sounds totally different. On cutting almost the same 4 dB, let's say. Listen to this one. This is very transparent. I don't hear anything happening. In this one, you're hearing a lot of things. Let's set it to 4. So the release here is pretty fast, and the attack time, it doesn't follow the timing because it's an analog. It's emulated based on the analog. So things goes in a chaos in analog, different than digital. Digital is mathematics. Whatever you put in, whatever numbers you put in, this is what you get out. So let's check the opto. Let's cut 4 dB here. I mean, with the opto, I can put all the way till like 6 dB and I wouldn't hear anything. Wait. It's very soft. That's why it's very nice to use an opto on a vocal, because they have a very soft character. But this one can go really fast. Look at that. You could feel it. Or you can use it like a normal opto, very soft. It's super soft. I just love it on vocals, on buses of vocals, or anything related to vocal, or any, like for instance a violin, something that doesn't have a transient. This is the best for that purpose. And then comes the killer, the purple. This thing has character more than the universe. Look at that, on 2 dB, and it's killing the sound. Even if I put the attack on the slowest, so now I'm trying not to have a character out of it, but usually the attack and release of these ones are really fast and different than all the others. Yeah. And this type of compressor have a variable ratio, so you can set more than one ratio at the same time. So for instance, here I can set 8 and 4 at the same time and create some weird sound, or 8 and 12. Or all of them. This thing goes like, you hear the distortion. It creates like some nice. I love this on the 808 because somehow it gives me, you know how a lot of people add a distortion on the 808 to hear it in the mid-range and high. This thing does the thing beautifully. So it compressed the crap out of the 808 and it allows the mid-range and high to go up, and then you put it in parallel mix. This thing will make wonders if you know how to use it. It's very harsh, but it has a specific use for it. Use it a lot on the transient. If you want to kill your vocal, you want to add this in the vocals, you know, especially in hip hop, you want this. You set the attack and release very fast, and you let it just touch there. It gives you that. It gives you very, very like pronounced words, you know, very easy to understand. And then you got the vari moo. Moo, I like to say that, very moo. This is made mainly for buses. Like I mean, you can use it on several like tracks, audio, like a vocal, like a drum, whatever. But what I really like it on is on the drum bus. It has its own character. It's different than the others. Each one of them has a different character. Their release is beautiful. And you can push it hard and still get a good sound out of it. Notice how I smash the snare in a nice way. I mean, you can use it and practice on it to see how it works with the source, goes through it. It's very important with every compressor that you have is to test it to the limit, like this, for instance. I want to see if I compress the crap out of it, what do I get? On a different attack, on different release. Use every compressor that you have, including the DAW compressor, the stock compressor. Understand them very well. Like take a month with all your compressors, because compression is a way to get your music sounding professional. Without proper compression, you can never get your music sounding professional, because if you set the attack wrong or the release wrong, you might crush the whole sound. So take your time with each compressor that you have. Learn them well. Know when I'm going to use this certain compressor. Like, should I use this one on this problem, or should I use that one? Make them like a toolbox that you pick whatever you want out of it and use it for a certain problem. So this is my overview about compressors and how to use them. I hope this helped you in a way or another. There you have it, folks. A comprehensive guide to audio compression and how to use compressors effectively. Remember, mastering compression takes practice, so don't be afraid to experiment and always trust your ears while doing so. All right, folks, from me, Joe, thanks a lot for tuning in today. Keep making great music, and until next time, happy compressing. This is the Home Studio Guru.